everybody.
Like hidden behind the steps.
Yeah, that's all right.
Welcome to the CLLC Pedagogy Advancement Series presentation. And I'm going to first of all introduce our presenters. We have Jessica Henderson. Yay! Okay. Jessica began as an instructional designer for the AFC Office of Distance Education in July 2021. Prior to her current role at OSU, she served as Director of Finance and Education at the Columbus Council of World Affairs, where she was primarily responsible for the creation and development of both in-person and online cultural competency curriculum for a 3-year experiential learning program for high school students. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics from John Carroll University and a Master of Arts in Italian Studies from Ohio State. Jessica served as a graduate teaching associate of Italian for 6 years at Ohio State, yes, teaching beginner-level Italian language courses and serving as a GTA for several Italian film and literature courses. In her work as an instructional designer, Jessica continues to employ many of the pedagogical skills that she acquired as a language instructor to create educational experiences that are both accessible and inclusive for as many students as possible. In addition to her work developing several online language courses in the College of Arts and Sciences, she is particularly interested in areas of motivation, engagement, and user experience in online learning environments. Her design strategies focus especially on incorporating multimodal means of representation and engagement, gameful learning elements, interactivity, and scenario-based learning. In addition, her past work experience as a data analyst guides her constant desire to analyze the effectiveness of her course design strategies through frequent data capturing, as well as both student and instructor feedback. Please join me in welcoming Jessica. I'd now like to introduce Julie Parson. Julie is the Assistant Director of the Basic French Language Program at OSU. She completed her Master's and PhD at Ohio State before serving as a lecturer and was promoted to Senior Lecturer in 2016. Julie has taught a wide variety of French courses at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, and she has taught via various delivery modes. She served as the Assistant Director of French Individualized Instruction for 9 years and was responsible for implementing the move to online courses for the basic level French courses during the initial outbreak of COVID-19. She has since created and maintained Carmen course shells for the in-person and online synchronous versions of French 1101, 1102, and 1155. Her interest in teaching technology has fueled her desire to innovate ways to create online French language courses that are grounded in sound pedagogical approaches to language learning. Julie's endorsements and qualifications include the Foreign Language Teaching Certificate, the Kickstart Week endorsement, and the Quality Matters Independent Course for Applying the QM rubric. These endorsements, along with a number of trainings and participation in conferences and colloquia, has given Julie a strong background in designing and teaching online and hybrid French courses. Please join me in welcoming Julie.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. Today, we'd like to talk to you about a project that we've been working on, that is the creation of asynchronous versions of the French basic level language courses. So we're talking about French 1101, 1102, and 1103. So this has been an exciting project to work on, as it has allowed me to tap into the experience that I've gained from serving as the Assistant Director of the Basic French Language Program and of French Individualized Instruction for many years. Thank you for closing that. The nature of these jobs, particularly in light of the pandemic, have pushed me to work on and rework choices that we make in how we deliver our basic French content, we deliver our basic French courses. And it's been both challenging and useful to think about how these choices can be rendered in courses taught in an asynchronous mode. Now, to open our presentation today, I'd like to start by talking a little bit about the background of this project. Now, this is a project that has been evolving for quite a little while now. And I'd like to paint the picture of how it came about. When I tell my colleagues that I'm working on asynchronous basic French courses, asynchronous basic French language classes, a response I often get is one of curiosity mixed with a little bit of why. Well, one reason is that one aim of these courses is to replace our aging and individualized instruction track. So individualized instruction, or II as we like to call it, was created or developed over 40 years ago as an alternative to the classroom track. And over the years, it has seen its fair share of evolutions, including the eventual move to online course offerings. I think most of the other languages that offer II courses still offer in-person and online courses, but in French, we decided to move our appointments completely online. Now, of course, pre-pandemic, we had a harder time trying to explain to people why someone might want to take language courses online or not in a traditional classroom setting. But even before COVID-19, we were seeing a burgeoning demand for online French language courses. Now, one argument against online learning, particularly the asynchronous the asynchronous mode of online learning for foreign languages, is because at least in some ways, this mode conflicts with what we know about how languages are learned. And I got to tell you, when I first thought about my response to this project, my response was, "I'll grant you that one." But since that time, I've come to look at the asynchronous mode rather as an opportunity to teach in a non-ideal setting. And as language instructors at the university level, right, we fight against this reality every single day, right? I know in French, we teach at the basic language level 4 times a week for 55 minutes a day. Not an ideal situation, right? Okay, so rather than rather than looking at the asynchronous mode from the point of view of that it's not something that will work for foreign language instruction, I've instead asked myself, okay, so what can we do? Of course, that doesn't really answer the question of why, now does it? And so to try to answer that question, I'd like to take a look at the types of students, who we tend to see students who have full-time jobs during the day and so who can't sign up for our four-day-a-week classes. And we have a good number of students who attend branch campuses where in-person French courses are no longer offered. We also have students who can't succeed in learning foreign languages well in a traditional classroom setting, or perhaps they have need for accommodations that are better offered outside of the traditional classroom. And so I'd like to posit that we make certain ableist beliefs when we say that foreign language learning has to take place in a classroom setting or even in an online synchronous setting. We're very lucky to be teaching and learning at a time when such weight is given by universities to providing access to learning to everyone. But SLDS or whomever tries that they may, they are not able to provide accommodations to everyone for everything. And they do try, they absolutely do. We sometimes forget that there are gray areas when it comes to the ideas of access. When I think about the kinds of students who take our basic level French courses, and when I think about the various course policies that we've set and changed again, and then further tweaked, it becomes very clear to me that there is a gray area in what students need in terms of access as well. And finding ways to remove impediments to language learning is something that is particularly close to my heart, because I have lived with a stutter for pretty much my entire life. I manage it fairly well now, mostly. But for the majority of my life, it was extremely noticeable, and at points it was absolutely debilitating. And let me tell you that when I was in high school and in college, I did everything that I could to avoid speech classes or classes that involved things like this, like giving presentations. So now I'm a foreign language nerd. And as the rest of you who also went to grad school could probably understand, a little bit of a masochist. So my passion for languages, and French in particular, counteracted a good part of the terror that I felt in language classes. But this is often not the case for some of our students. Maybe students are not yet at the point where they can document their disability. Maybe they don't have a definable or recognizable disability, or don't choose to be identified with that disability. So they can't or don't want to go through the process of seeking out university-sanctioned accommodations. And sure, the course coordinator in me says, well, tough. Here are all the ways that we can accommodate you. That's all we can do. But the human version of me cringes at that response and recognizes how important it is to look for ways to remove those impediments for our students. So now before I move on, I'd like to point out that this talk is not a defense of or promotion for this is for you, Janice, for purely asynchronous foreign language courses. As I mentioned before, to try to create basic level of language courses taught in a purely asynchronous mode would fly in the face of what we know about how languages are learned. So it goes without saying that there will need to be at least some synchronous elements to these eventual courses, much like what we have in our II courses right now. But for the purposes of this presentation, though, we are going to focus on activities that were built using new technological tools that help us provide students with what they need to successfully learn French. Frequently when I talk about individualized instruction courses, unless I'm talking to somebody, oh, yes. Sure. I have a microphone on, but I guess it's not.
It's just for the recording.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll try, so sorry. So frequently when I talk about individualized instruction courses, unless I'm talking to someone who coordinates or teaches in II, people tend to stare at me rather blankly when I reference terms like PMAT or learning packet. So I'm going to take a few moments to go over what individualized instruction actually is. In essence, long before online courses existed, II gave students who couldn't take traditional foreign language courses some options. So, again, this is probably a review for a lot of you, but just very quickly. Individualized instruction courses are self-paced and self-guided foreign language instruction, and they're often a good option for students who have anxiety about speaking in a foreign language. They're very flexible in the sense that they offer variable credit. That is, they could take half or 3/4 or an entire course in a given semester. And if they don't finish it in that semester, they can complete it later on. Students also have the option to change their enrollment up to a certain point in the semester. And in some iterations of the course courses that they're allowed to set their own deadlines, which of course allows them even greater flexibility. The courses contain modules with set components that students complete. These modules contain things like the learning packet, which is basically a guide that allows students to teach themselves the material. Or inside of a Carmen module, there's a quote-unquote roadmap of sorts for the module. These modules also consist of pretest work and exam components. Pretest work, of course, would be homework, conversation appointments, and a PMAT, which is our fancy way of saying pretest. Exam components are what you'd think they are, a written exam and an oral exam. And oftentimes these modules are given bonuses or penalties depending on when students finish the modules with respect to their set deadlines. Just to talk about instructor interaction a little bit in individualized instruction, conversation appointments with instructors tend to replace in-class activities, at least to a certain extent. In later iterations of the courses in French, at least, we started to use group conversations so that students could interact with each other as well. Instructors also grade all of the pretest work and exam components, as you might imagine. Okay. Oh, and then, of course, students are welcome to make additional appointments and are not limited to just the bare minimum. And so I would be remiss if I were to talk about this evolution and how we deliver our basic language courses if I didn't talk about the effect that COVID had. COVID forced us into modern times in a lot of ways. Though we all scrambled at the initial outbreak of COVID-19 to move in-person courses online, we learned in the semesters that followed how to make online synchronous foreign language courses work, or at least work better than what they did in spring of 2020. But this isn't a discussion of online synchronous modes in foreign language teaching. That conversation has happened and is still happening repeatedly. A part of those conversations, though, centers on the expectation that online synchronous language courses can or should replicate an in-person learning experience. And if that is the goal, I'd just like to quickly point out some of the disadvantages of online synchronous foreign language learning. For example, Zoom is limited in its ability to replace a classroom experience. We get close with breakout rooms, of course, but I think many of us would argue that it's the tool that we have and not necessarily the right tool for the right job. Also, synchronous online foreign language teaching only does so much to help curb student anxiety. Though many studies have been done on the positive effects of asynchronous language learning on student anxiety, and there is mounting evidence to this effect, I wanted to highlight some OSU student experiences for the purposes of this talk. So I've been in contact with some students who have taken French in individualized instruction and who have also taken it in the classroom after their experience in individualized instruction. One student in particular described to me her experience in an introductory French class that she had taken previously at Columbus State during the pandemic. It was her first French class online, and she told me that since it was taught on Zoom and wasn't asynchronous, she didn't find it particularly different to a standard in-person class. She contrasted this experience with that of taking French 1103.61, which is our online individualized instruction course here at OSU when she transferred. And she says, "This course was exceptionally different to those I had taken in the past, as instead of being lectured on the material, you simply had to read about and do activities on them. In my opinion, whilst I didn't personally struggle in self-teaching the material, I would say that doing such requires a good amount of self-discipline and willingness to learn. If you can't set aside the time to sit down, read an idea, and in practice try to implement it, then you'll likely struggle." Experience with the individualized French course, if you have a question, emailing a professor with such typically results in a week, in a quick, ample response. Good job, II team. Another student is currently taking French 2101, which is our Introduction to French and Francophone Studies course in II, and also French 3101, which is our in-person French grammar review in the classroom. And so I asked him to give me his thoughts on the two modes. And he told me, with French 2101 in the II format, I've had a good experience with struggle with a lot of the material in the course. It is a big jump from French 3 to French 2101, where I'm actively reading French material. I spend multiple hours per week on this course alone, but I do not think the II format is taking away from my learning experience. Availability is always open to meet with instructors, and I attend office hours with the course coordinator frequently to review material and ensure I'm prepared for the upcoming exams. I'm going to skip a bit here, but he says, overall, while I've had a good experience with II and traditional classroom courses, I could see other students struggling to keep up with the material as the II format is fast-paced. With myself, I would say I genuinely want to learn the material and I want to learn French. For instance, I'm not simply taking the classes to fulfill a language requirement. I have aspirations to live in France someday. And so with this class, I take all the courses seriously and try harder than I would in other classes. II courses allow me to work at my own individual pace, separate from the pace of the classrooms. Sometimes I feel I understand the material and can move on immediately, but other times I can take longer with the material if I do not understand some topics completely. Now I choose to highlight these two students because they embody the two kinds of students who tend to take II courses on purpose. And again, I contrast these students with the ones who end up in II due to circumstances like full-time jobs or a lack of availability of other modes of French where they're at. Highly motivated language learners and students who do not learn well in an in-person setting do best in II. Both of these examples are highly motivated language learners, and the first student I mentioned shared with me an example of why she prefers asynchronous learning in some cases. In reference to the 1103 II course again, she said, "I suppose the best way I can describe it is taking Coco Chanel as an example, as she was a topic discussed in 1103. If I were to learn such in class, I would more than likely be almost entirely disengaged, as neither fashion nor Chanel is something I hold a large amount of interest towards. But as it was taught online, I was able to give myself the ability to, if I wanted, learn more about the subject on my own accord, finding information that interests me. In class, I feel that oftentimes the extent of information I receive on a subject is just what is discussed in class. Would I have learned that Coco Chanel was a Nazi agent had I attended 1103 in person? Not likely. I love this girl. She went on to describe a few other examples and then said, "Perhaps this is something I do because I'm severely ADHD, and I like to distract myself with tangents not entirely relevant to the course material. But regardless, I do feel that I gain from such I gain a fuller understanding, or perhaps just any degree of interest whatsoever regarding things that otherwise would bore me to tears. I think it primarily comes down to that. In class, if I were to look up external information, I feel as though I was distracting myself or disengaging from the lecture. Whereas being online and asynchronous gives you the liberty to do exactly that." So this student's example leads me to come back to a central concern about providing asynchronous basic level French courses. That is, this mode allows students to interact with the material in a way they cannot in the traditional classroom setting, nor in the online synchronous setting. So if we can accept that asynchronous engagement with the material can be a really positive boon for some students, and we absolutely can, right? We've been working with techniques like flipped classrooms for years, and we regularly use other asynchronous elements in our in-person classes. Some elements naturally lend themselves to asynchronous modes. These elements include things like discussion forums, blogs, social media, activities that ask students to read and do something with authentic text, news articles, and the like. In your teaching experience, you've likely discovered that content courses tend to fare better with asynchronous elements, mainly because the goal of the courses is not language acquisition. Acquisition may and often does occur as a byproduct of the content courses, but it's not the main goal. But if we acknowledge, though, that there is a need for asynchronous course options for language courses, we come back to the question, what can we do asynchronously? And inevitably, that question leads us right into our obstacles. That is, we know language acquisitions happens best with ample, meaningful input. We know that language acquisition happens best with ample opportunities for the exchange of information. And we also know that language acquisition happens best when students have time, motivation, and an effective method. So what are our asynchronous solutions to these obstacles? Well, to talk about some of our solutions to the problem of providing ample, meaningful input, I'm going to turn the reins over to Jessica to talk about how she created presentation videos using Animator and how she made structured input activities, output activities, all similar to what one might choose to use in a classroom using H5P.
All right, thanks. And I apologize, I am very short, so for those who can't see me behind the screen, I'll try to move back and forth. So I'm gonna first show you a few of the things that we've done for more of the basic lesson components of how we're actually teaching vocabulary and grammar points, and then move to some of the actual practice activities that we've done. So it's a combination of Animator, as Julie has said, as well as H5P, mostly H5P. So we'll talk a little bit how we combine those two. The first one I'm going to show you, and I got to find my slides here. And also just a caveat that these are not in final draft stage by any mean. So everything you're going to see is still sort of being developed and fleshed out. So I just want to put that out there. So some of the videos might not have captions and stuff yet. We're working on those things as well. So I'll look at the basic alphabet and numbers example. This was done using H5P, so something similar to what we would do in the classroom, right? If we're standing in a classroom, we might have a PowerPoint slide with various images. We're repeating words, having students repeat them back. We can do something similar now with H5P, where we can have either images, a combination of images and text, and we can also insert the audio. So this particular one, we've chunked the alphabet into 5 to 6 letters per slide. So we're chunking them, letting them listen to each one.
Arigato.
And so they can go through each letter and listen to each one.
Ballerine.
Also for additional accessibility, if they need to see something else, we can provide text within speech bubbles to give those captions for the audio. And then on each slide, we also have flashcards where they can then practice after the fact and continue to repeat them. So here they hear the audio again. So they hear the letter. Now if they flip this, they will see the letter that it was associated with. And then it continues. Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious if you could explain what the H5P is.
Yeah, it's not a disease.
Yes, sorry. Yes, going back a step, H5P stands for HTML5 package, I believe, that's the order. It is essentially an online interactive content creation tool. Right now, because of the complexity involved in the multiple content types that you can create with it, only instructional designers within the College of Arts and Sciences, within pharmacy, all of the other colleges across the campus have access to create this content, hence the collaboration here. So essentially, Julie might provide me with content in French, so give me the text version of it, and then I transform it into the sort of visual presentation aspects. Good?
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you repeat why it doesn't have general access?
There are many different content types available. So this one in particular is an interactive course presentation, and they can contain other content types within them. So the complexity of it gets very involved. It also doesn't have ready-made templates. So if you're not design savvy per se, it can be very difficult, particularly in terms of making sure things are accessible, knowing to put text within speech bubbles and sort of figuring out some of those quirks of things. It also comes down to licenses for colleges and universities and cost, of course. But the bigger element, no, it is very, I will tell you, it has taken me a very long time to like get the process of creating content in this down, and I've been working with this for hours upon hours, but not just for French, but for other things as well. So if you don't have the time to really sit down and get to know the tool, it can be very difficult to work with. Yeah.
If you have an instructor who's interested, is there someone that you can talk with, or like who has created this policy and you can talk with?
Let me, pharmacy I think owns sort of the accessibility component of it. They're the ones who have run it through all of the sort of necessary approvals. So I can, send me a note after and I can sort of reach out to him and see what the guidelines are for that. And then,
Isn't it Elizabeth Wu's office too?
yes, in our college, but I think pharmacy owns the broader like university. There's a whole bunch of cross connections with who owns what. So
I know that
Stephen Nagel is the one who sort of,
to help with a lot of this, so that's a resource.
yeah, Stephen Nagel in pharmacy is the one who's sort of leading all of the documentation and all of those things. And he's the one who I think puts the purchasing through for the licenses and all that. So usually he's the one that Elizabeth and the rest of us will go through in terms of signing for the licenses and all those things. But yes.
Jessica, can you please explain that one of the reasons we're doing this presentation is because your office, your new office, is staffed to help
Yes.
anyone who wants to do some kind of course like this.
Yes.
You know, that's one of the benefits of what's
Right.
going on here.
Yes, and we are here to do this as well as other simpler things as well, just particularly helping with Carmen, any Carmen uses, Carmen issues, but we also can help you create things like this. There's no cost associated with our office, so we are a free resource to support anyone within arts and sciences. So yeah, if you need it, come talk to me, come talk to us. It's not just me, we have one other instructional designer, we're about to have a third, and the more people that we get coming to us, the more people we can bring in to support all of you. So, okay, I'm gonna get back to examples and then we can talk more about that later. So this is just one example of a basic sort of interactive presentation slide and how we can sort of present basic vocabulary. For things that are more communicative in nature, so things like verb forms and stuff like that, we wanted to try to find a way to replicate what we would do in the classroom, and that's sort of where Animator comes in. Animator is not, again, we have gone through the exceptions of being able to have access to create stuff with this, so this also is from our office. But let me show you, this mouse is backwards for me, I apologize. Where are our, here, okay. So the verb to be. And I think this one has some of the text at least written on the slides. If I don't have the captions on it, I apologize. Hopefully we can hear it.
Salut, je m'appelle Claire.
Salut, je m'appelle André. Je suis étudiant.
Je suis étudiante aussi.
Alors, je suis étudiant. Et tu es étudiant.
Oui, je suis étudiant. Et tu es étudiant. Il est étudiant. Mais elle est étudiante.
Il est professeur.
Get to the interaction first.
Elle est professeur.
Okay, so they go through that quick presentation, and then these little circles down here represent interactions that we can insert within the video. So in this case, we just sort of walked through examples of the singular forms of the verb to be, and now we're asking them to tell us what those forms were based on what they just saw. So within this, it's a fill in the blank, right? Forgive me if I get my French wrong. A. Yes.
She took French and II.
I did. I
so.
took French II, so I am a product of that as well. Yeah, and then it will tell you immediately if you got it right or wrong. And you can also add additional feedback and like give them hints. You could tell them if they got it wrong to go back and review the conversations again. So it has that sort of immediacy within it, which is very important for asynchronous versions when they don't have the contact in class, right? So that's one example of sort of the Animator version of these things. let me go back to my modules. I'm going to go to another example here. Oh, okay. You don't mind if I show the,
Oh,
the
please,
360?
yeah.
Okay. So for another sort of content type we have used, this is a 360 image. So we actually took a 360 image in one of the Haggerty classrooms to present classroom vocabulary, which is in the first chapter. So students can sort of move around the room. Yes, myself is in here as well. You have to use what you can work with at the time. But we've labeled, and the view on this one is not particularly great at the moment, but we have labeled various things around the room, put in the French text as well as the audio. So again,
Un téléphone portable.
if I click on the audio, I can hear the word as well as see the written word. And we've also followed it up with this sort of like mini scavenger hunt activity. So we're asking them, you know, are there 2 clocks within the room? So now once they've sort of combed through the vocabulary, they know what clock is, they have to look very closely to count how many clocks are actually displayed in the room. I think there are 2,
I think
so I'm
there are
going to say
2,
yes. And then again, they can see whether they got it right or wrong. And there are a few. So again, this one's asking them how many posters are around the room. So they'd have to look, this mouse is driving me nuts. They have to look around the walls, right? There's one over here, there's one here. I think there are 3 of them. And then they type in the numbers because they've also learned numbers by this point. So it's practicing those as well. And I will say you can, I don't know why I can't do it on this screen at the moment, but there usually is a full screen view that you can make these things bigger. I don't know why it's not showing up right now. What's that? Oh yeah, it moved on me. Yeah, so you can make it full screen. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yep. Yeah, so you can make any of the presentation slides, all of that stuff, you can make full screen and make them bigger. But yeah, so that is that one.
And you use that same image in a listening file, or like a speaking thing too, right?
I think I ended up using a different
Okay.
one for that one, but we can show
Okay.
that one next.
Yeah.
So these are sort of the main content types we've used to create the actual like lessons. So when we're teaching them vocabulary and grammar. Now I'm going to show you some examples of the activities themselves. Let me go to, actually let's stick with this one. So for most of the activities, I'm again using that sort of interactive presentation content type because it allows us to move sort of sequentially through questions. And each one of these are set up as assignments, excuse me, but I believe we decided that they're all like very low stakes, like participation points. They're actual homework. These are just for like additional practice with the lessons that they've just done.
Yeah, the goal of this is to have a replacement for in-class meetings.
Right. So those like activities we'd be doing in class, now we have a way to give them feedback that they otherwise wouldn't have in an asynchronous setting. So again, here we can give them basic, and some of this will change now that I've sort of, again, worked with this enough. I might move the instructions to like the Carmen page, but either way, we have the instructions that tell them sort of what to do. We can also give them those sort of model statements for certain things, but this one is basically just asking them to look at the image and say yes or no whether this item exists within the image. So a very basic input activity to recognize these words that they've just learned. And again, you can expand this and make it bigger, right? So is there a door? Yes. And then it'll tell us again whether it's right or wrong. This other one, is there a window? In this case, no. So they go through several of these questions before we get to sort of the next activity. The next activity is something sort of similar. This time we're focusing on objects within their book bag, but again, still that sort of identification of, yes, sorry.
I apologize for interrupting again. But I'm wondering what level of course is this? Like, is it level 1, level 2?
Yeah.
French 1.
Yes, this is at level 1. Yeah.
Okay.
This is like chapter 1, level 1, very basic.
Are you taking these straight out of Winnie's textbook?
Some of them, yes.
They're more influenced by my PowerPoints for French
Yeah.
1101, but yeah.
There are a
Yeah,
couple that we've been able
the,
to.
the idea is that it would be French 1101, so using her text is what, you know.
Can you see what happens when you get it wrong?
When you get it wrong? Yes. So, so is there a calculator? Let's say no.
You don't get your star.
And you can set these differently, right? You can allow them to see the solution, allow them to retry, or you can turn those things off. Because this is meant for multiple practice and they can come back to it as many times as they want, we've left those on so that they can see. In this case, obviously the answer is yes, so it doesn't really matter, but. Yes, yes, I will get to that.
It's my favorite too.
Yeah, I will get to that. I wanted to show in this one the last activity. So this sort of mimics the first thing that we did, but now this is our output activity where they have to label all of these items within the room. So when they click on these bubbles, it will ask them, what is it? And they have to type in the word. I don't even know what I just clicked on,
Yeah,
so
I
I
know
should
what
probably have looked.
And that's-
Yeah, I'll just put in like, I know it's wrong, but, and then again, it'll tell me if it's right or wrong. If I'm, I've tried multiple times, I can see the solution and it will tell me what that solution is. And I've also, these little speech bubbles are here for the sake of helping them identify things, because yes, some things might be hard to identify. So if they struggle, they can click on the speech bubble and see like, oh, this is pointing to a window. What is window? Yes.
So, is it something that you can configure where if they decide to see the solution, they can't retry? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think it gives you that level of, I don't believe, because within H5P itself, it doesn't let you like specify attempts. There may be a way, if you're using this as an assignment within Carmen, that you could do that.
Sure, I guess this is just practice.
Yeah, which is again why, yes. If we hopefully have enough time left at the end, we might see a different version with H5P that is more for assessment types of things, and I can show you some of that.
But the option to see the solution only happens once they submit some sort of answer?
Yes, that you can set, that one you can change. You can change it to, they have to submit something for fill in the blank before they can actually see the solution. If they just leave it blank, you can set it so that they can't. So, yes, you can do that.
And so you can add feedback when they get it wrong.
Mhm.
Can it be specified based on their attempt? Like if they just forget the accent mark, can you input that like, hey, did you remember the accent mark? Or is it just
For
like-
fill-in, it's not. It wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to tell exactly if that was the only thing that they missed, but you could give them those additional hints, like, "Hey, make sure you're paying attention to accent marks," or give them those things that they're likely gonna, make mistakes on.
Can I interrupt for a second? Since you're all having lots of questions, we want to get the questions on our recording. This will get the question on the recording, even though you can't hear your voice. So if you have a question, you raise your hand. Please let me get you this mic, because we're missing a lot of them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Can I keep going? Okay. The last sort of H5P thing I wanted to show you is she just left, but the pronunciation stuff. So let me go back here really quickly. So there's an additional content type in H5P called Speak the Words. I'm trying to find where I'm going now here. Give me 1 second. Maybe we could do this one. For basically everyone else, it is deemed inaccessible, but our office has made the argument that we need this for practicing languages, and we have put an exception through, so we have access to use this. With the caveat, again, that this is meant solely for practice because it is not a perfect tool, so using it for assessment would never be a good idea because it's just not 100% accurate. But it does at least give them some additional speaking practice that they otherwise wouldn't have. So this content type is relatively simple. We can insert audio, video, or an image above the question. This case is just a question. So we are asking them how many chairs are in the classroom, which this is the one where we use, it's hard to see all together, but we have an image of the classroom below. The instructions state, refer to the picture to answer these questions. I believe there are seven So all they would do is push the push to speak button. And I gotta allow it, of course. Il y a 6 chaises. I think that's wrong. It's not good. It might not pick up my mic. It might not pick up my mic, but they would basically say that phrase. If it's right, again, you'll get that star showing you that it's correct. If it's wrong, again, you can have the option to see the solution and see how it interpreted what you said. And then it will also give you the correct answers that we have inserted for the question. So it will give you the text feedback, but not the audio feedback. So we also have an additional thing at the bottom where if they're really struggling to get the speaking portion right, they can come down to the bottom and refer to the correct pronunciation that is associated with each of those. Again, this is solely for additional practice and not meant for assessment.
Can I just add one thing about this activity? I was really pleasantly surprised with how accurately the tool understands what you were saying. You know, not just me with my American French or what have you. I mean, even I had my daughter who was learning French. I had her do some of the activities, and it did a surprisingly good job of understanding her too. So.
Yeah, and I have tried to purposely get things wrong to see if it will, like things like the feminine endings of words, like purposely making them sound masculine so that it will count it as incorrect, and it does. It picks up those things. So if I say important instead of importante, it will catch that. I've also been using this with Polish. My Polish pronunciation is terrible, but like I've been able to utilize it for some of these practice activities as well. So I think those are the main things I wanted to show with H5P, and then I don't know if you want to touch on your stuff, and then we can come back.
Given the time, I'm going to very quickly go over some of the other examples of just to basically make my point. We talked about the other two obstacles that we have are opportunities for exchange of information. I'm not going to talk to you about discussion forums. You know about discussion forums. Okay. We also have been using in our in-person classes a service called Conversations Unbound. Those of you who have used Talk Abroad, it's the same concept except that they employ people who have been forcibly displaced. We can talk more about that outside of this talk if you like. I feel very strongly that this is a good service, and it would be very beneficial in an asynchronous course, giving students an opportunity to, outside of a set class time, have authentic conversations with native speakers. But again, time constraints. And then I also just want to touch on time motivation and an effective method. Specifically, the flexibility of an asynchronous mode allows students to have time, though there are pitfalls as well, particularly for the unmotivated learner. I'm going to skip over what I have about encouraging students to not fall behind. Motivation as well. The asynchronous mode can enhance motivation for learners who deal with anxiety or other issues that prevent them from learning in a traditional classroom. And as far as the effective method goes, well, we've shown you how we employ the communicative method in these activities and with the course structure in general. Now, I would like Jessica to talk just a little bit about where we're going with these asynchronous courses. There's some other tools that I think will be very useful as well.
Yeah. So this is kind of what we've done with French so far. Some of the other things, we have another tool that we literally just gained access to in September, so we have not started playing around with that in French at all at this point, but you may have seen it in Carmen courses. It's called ThingLink. It is it's kind of similar to H5P in that it can create interactive content. It basically works with a base image or media file, like a video file. It can work with 360 images. It can work with 3D images. And then what happens is tags are layered on top of that. So those tags can be almost anything. They can be other embedded content from H5P even. They can be like uploaded PDF files. But the benefit of this ThingLink content is that everyone has access to it. So H5P, only our office has the ability to create content in that. ThingLink, faculty, staff, students within ASC have access to create that content. I'm going to show you a very silly example, so please don't judge because I just made this. And yes, it is sort of myself talking to myself, so it's a little bizarre. But this is an example of a video that can be uploaded. So again, students have access to do this as well. So if they create a video, they can upload videos, give access to other students within the class, and they can be tagging each other's videos. So if you look at, why is my screen not, hold on, let me make sure this shows, okay. So again, here we have a video that now has tags within the video. So as an instructor, this is, again, a very rough example of myself giving an introduction of who I am, where I'm from, things that I like. And then these tags could be added by students themselves where they're responding.
Ciao Jessica, mi chiamo Sara.
Right? So it could be a tag where they're recording themselves talking.
Ciao Jessica, mi chiamo Sara.
It could be a video. Yes, again, I'm talking to myself. But it could also be a video tag. So they could even be having these sort of asynchronous conversations in a way. So that's one component of it. I'm not going to get into the full. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So, no, because I've been thinking about this kind of work for something that I'm working on, and that works fine when it's, hi, my name is. What happens when you get into anything? You know what I mean? Like, how are they going to know they're answering you correctly? Do they have to?
Well, for something like this, so the other thing I see happening with this is, again, this could be an example between two students, like maybe one student's asking a question, the other one's coming back, and then the instructor is reviewing their conversation, right? It could also be the student uploads a presentation that they've given, some sort of oral presentation, and the instructor has access to go in that video and leave feedback at those key moments. So where you saw those annotations, they don't have to be, back and forth responses. They could just be feedback about something they said incorrectly, something,
Okay,
really
so
anything.
I guess what I'm saying, I get it now. So it's basically question, answer, question, answer. It's not like a dialogue where you're saying, I'm saying this, then a student comes in and says something, then you're recorded saying something.
No,
I can't be.
No,
that.
no,
Okay,
I
got
wouldn't
it.
do that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. The other thing that I want to point out, there's a whole bunch with ThingLink, but we have a whole workshop coming up on ThingLink in December 5th, where you can learn a whole bunch more. And we also just opened a training resource in Carmen that has, all sorts of information about the types of things you can create with this, so I'm not going to go into it now, but I wanted to at least show you one other thing about ThingLink that I think is fascinating and could be very useful in some sort of innovative ways. This text and media tag here, so this particular tag allows you to have a single image, an image gallery, a video next to text. It could also be a PDF file next to, an image or something like that. But each one of these tags has this immersive reader. And what this immersive reader, I don't know why it's doing that. That's never happened before. Okay. So the immersive reader will allow them to, again, this is an accessibility feature for students, but it allows them to listen to any of the text that's within that tag. But the sort of cooler thing about this is if you click on a word, that one, of course, is not going to do it. In most cases, it gives you a picture dictionary.
Oh, cool.
And if I have this set to another language, I also will have the option to hear the word
Content.
in both languages. So let me just go, I think it's in here. All right, so I'm just going to, why is this thing so big? Let's put it in Dutch. That's fine. Okay. So if I put it in Dutch, I click on this, now I can see the word.
B. Woorden.
So I can also hear it in both languages. The other thing that I find fascinating with this is you can also highlight different parts of speech. So I can have it highlight just the nouns. Let me see if I can make this smaller because it's way too big. So now all of the nouns in my text are highlighted. I can switch that to also just be adjectives. I see this being sort of a helpful metacognitive type of exercise with students, right? Where they could even upload their own text and then you ask them to review, right, various parts of speech or things like that. So I just wanted to point that out as another potential useful feature. What time is it?
Got 4 minutes, go.
I got 4 minutes. Okay. So many things to share. This one is very involved. So yeah, if you're interested in ThingLink, come to the workshop, join the course, and learn a whole bunch more because I don't have time right now. This I wanted to point out. So scenario-based learning is something we are playing around with in Scarlet courses that we are working on. We are working on 4 Scarlet language courses at the moment. So Scarlet being our public-facing platform. These are more the like Italian on the ground, French on the ground models where we're not trying to teach them like, every level of the language. We're trying to give them the basics to function in that culture when they're traveling for work or traveling for a quick trip. But because this is public facing and not really credit bearing, we wanted to find more unique ways to present some of these quizzes. So instead of our sort of standard Carbon quiz, we're playing around with turning them into scenarios. So in this first module, this is Polish. This is not complete by any means yet, but I'm working on it. We have started creating a story. So we've taught them the alphabet. We've taught them numbers 0 through 10. We've taught them how to say, my name is, what is your name, I'm from, where are you from? That's basically it to this point in this module. So here we're walking them through a story, right? We have this American student named Jordan Gray who's traveling to Poland. He's just boarded his flight. 2 passengers of the same age sit down next to him, and the male passenger greets Jordan, right? So then our first question is so they have to listen to what that male passenger said.
Cześć.
So they hear the greeting from the male passenger, and then they have to say what they would say in response. In this case, it's focusing on formal, informal. That was an informal greeting. They would likely say the informal greeting in response to that. I'm not going to type in my Polish because it's terrible. And then the story sort of continues. So after that, the female passenger turns to him and begins to speak in Polish. Again, now we're going to listen to what she says.
Jak masz na imię?
So this, they have to understand that was asking. So in Polish, they ask either for just your first name or your full name. So they have to have recognized that was only asking for their first name and then give the proper response. And then it sort of continues. So this is grouped into sort of 5 questions around what is your name, my name is, etc. Once they get to the end of these slides, this button allows them to proceed to the next part of the scenario. This is set up similar. Here we're focusing on where they're from, right? So they're focusing on, in this case, the form of the verb to be. We have taught them a couple of those forms at this point. So they'd have to type in the correct form for I am, right? I am from Chicago. And then in this case, the name of the country, because they've also learned that.
It's not correct.
This hasn't been reviewed yet, so I'm just gonna, because I will also say, I created all these questions on my own, so I did not have help doing them, so I apologize if it's incorrect.
But don't worry, we'll go over it.
Yes. Yeah.
Here, I was like,
Yeah. Yes. I tried my best to create Polish questions. Anyway, so then after those first set of questions, now we start getting into these branches. So here, after his long flight, right, he finally lands at the Warsaw airport. As he exits, he hears the tail end of an announcement.
Poziom 1.
Again, I don't know if this all needs to be reviewed, so we have to, but the whole point is they're supposed to recognize the number, right? So they had to have recognized what level baggage claim is on. It is, yes, it is 1, and I'm gonna go through the correct answers because I haven't built the incorrect ones yet. But then we give them feedback like, yes, that's correct. Now here's what happens, right? If they had chosen level 2, we would probably send them on some journey where they're like back at the checkout counter and now they have to decide whether they're gonna ask someone or if they're gonna go back. I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. I have to create that part of the story. But anyway, it's basically a story that allows them to take varying pathways. Again, here they have to recognize the number that they just saw on the board,
Marla has a question.
so on and so forth. Yes.
Give Kristen the microphone.
All right. Just one question and a recommendation related to the ThingLink. I'm wondering which is more accessible, if you will, H5P or ThingLink?
They have both gone through full accessibility review. So I don't know that there's a big difference between the two. I will say I love the additional ThingLink accessibility features, but H5P is also not bad. I can't really one's not necessarily better than the other because they all have the same capabilities. Also, again, why ThingLink is allowed to be used by everybody because you don't necessarily have to know the quirks of how some of those accessibility features work because they're all sort of automatically embedded in them. The one thing I also didn't show you with ThingLink is there is an entire link to a web accessible version. So if you have a sort of presentation slide, let me find a slide real quick. This one here. So this one has, you can put in information about what is in the scene itself, right? If I go to, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's got a whole bunch of tags on it, right? If I go to share and I click this other, show you what the accessible version looks like. Maybe, did that not work? I use a Mac, so this is very confusing to me. How do I get back here? Why is this not working? Share, other, copy. How do I paste? Is it Control V?
Control V, yeah.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So, yes, the accessible version will open everything in sort of a vertical format, so it opens all of the tags. And they also have this huge built-in, it has text for dyslexic, people who have dyslexia, it'll adjust the text for those readers. I will also say part of this came out of our review of them, because we went back to them with several things, and they're incredible about fixing things when we find stuff. So, and very quick to do those things as well. So, yeah.
I think I can also yell. I want to make sure before time is over, is this accessibility part of what makes it better than, I see the scenario-based learning, the scenario quiz is amazing, but the video of you with the intersperse, that's reminding me a lot of VoiceThread or Flipgrid. Is the accessibility where the real bang for our buck is in ThingLink? Why is this the new greatest tool?
I think it combines a lot of things that VoiceThread, because it's not just specific to videos, right? Again, you can do, I've created an entire virtual tour of Orton Hall in ThingLink. You can, again, upload 3D models. So the benefit is that we have to use fewer tools to accomplish more things, right? You can also do scenario building in ThingLink. I should say that. So the scenario I built was in H5P. You can build them in ThingLink as well. There are some design differences and reasons why I chose H5P instead of ThingLink, but it can be done. So, yeah. And it's also relatively cheap, and students have access, and it doesn't cost them anything to create content. They have access for free. Other?
Okay.
Are we good?
Any other questions?
Any questions? Questions, please. Yes.
Can I say it here?
Yeah.
One, I'm struck by how much work this is, how much work you've already done, how much work it's going to be. It's really amazing, and it also, besides for asynchronous learning for students, it seems like it will be a great tool, and maybe I've already thought about this, for new teachers. Because what you're implementing here are some methods that in the classroom sometimes aren't obvious for new teachers if they haven't learned a certain way. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it is definitely an amount of work, but I think every time we do it, it gets faster and faster because now we've sort of learned what does work and what doesn't work. We're working on those 4 language courses in Scarlet. Once we have one down, we've got a template now, and now we can sort of, reuse things and not take as much time. So.
Any other questions? Marla.
So with the H5P and ThingLink, so you're talking about ThingLink is the one where there's more access and options of pieces that you can develop within ThingLink compared to H5P.
They, how do I explain this in an easy way? They both have lots of capabilities. ThingLink is, I would say, the way I separate the two is I like ThingLink more for presentation types of things that don't necessarily go with like the question-based activities that we had, because some of the question types aren't as robust. It's easier to build in ThingLink because you only have 5 media types and 5 tags, and like that's it. Literally all you do is hit add tag, you type in your text, upload a media file, and you're done. H5P is much more involved and involves much more design work, if that makes sense. There are a lot of differences, and I don't know that I have time to go into all of them right now, but.
No, I got that, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Elvia.
You have a list of languages. If there's
In the ThingLink one?
yes, or for example, I teach indigenous language Quechua, and if there's not the name of my language in the list, could I use that?
So ThingLink does also have you can upload translations to ThingLink as well. So for example, if you had a version in Quechua, you could create it originally in English, right? But for all of your content type, you could upload a version in Quechua, and then when you share that, there's a setting to change the language that is the main language. So you could have a version in English and a version in Quechua. You could also just have a version in Quechua if it's not within that list. There's something like 80 languages within that translation list. I haven't looked through, and I've seen some very obscure ones, so it may be in there. How good it is, I don't know, but it may be there.
Okay. Anyone else? Can you please join me in thanking them for this wonderful presentation?